Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm Shayna Cersei and I'm so excited to paint with you today. We're here doing another watercolor journal page and we are going to do poppies or a poppy. This was requested in the comments by one of you lovely folks out there. So I am going to do a poppy, and we're not going to do a whole bunch of loose poppies. We're going to do one poppy. And this is a lovely flower. Beautiful fluttery petal flower with an interesting little center. I've already drawn one out here, sketched one out, and I'm going to re-sketch it in my watercolor book. Something you can do if you're not that comfortable with drawing, you can definitely learn to transfer things. So you don't have to worry about drawing freehand all the time if you learn how to transfer. So definitely have a couple of videos on that, and I do that a few different ways. But whether it's with a light box or with graphite paper or just coloring the back of your paper and then tracing it on top of your watercolor book, that works perfectly well. And I do that often for different things. So, but today we're going to draw this poppy. All right, so we're going to start by figuring out our placement. I have just a basic drawing pencil. This is an H, so not super hard, but not super soft either. If you struggle with really hard lines with your pencils, you can get different hardnesses of pencil so that way they draw much lighter naturally and you don't have to worry about pressing really lightly or pressing really hard. So if you really struggle and you want to create really light lines without having to worry about it too much, you can just get a harder pencil. So the higher the number, here I'll show you this one, the higher the number, the harder the pencil and the lighter the lines will be. So this is an 8 H, and this one is just an H. So 8 H, you can barely see it. It's so light, versus this line is much darker. So go ahead and get yourself a couple bucks, maybe not even a whole dollar if you buy them open stock, but you can get yourself a harder pencil. So that's just a little tip. I'm not going to use this because you'll barely be able to see what I'm drawing. All right, so we're going to start by finding our placement. And what I usually do when I'm trying to figure out like where to put something is I'll make a few marks. Like I want the top of the flower to take up this much space, to just try to visualize where that's going to go. And I'll just put a few little marker lines down to give myself a general space. And then I have this little bud down here. I'm gonna approximate where that's gonna go. Okay, so I have my general composition of where the main parts and features are going to be. I'm going to start with my center on this poppy. So I'm going to do a little half circle, and that's going to center me, and I'm going to build my petals all around that. And then this is going to have lots of fun little kind of interesting details of these little dots, and you know, there'll be some texture and yellow in here. We don't have to draw all of that in, but just putting that in there for now. Okay, so the biggest thing is these petals in front, some are coming out and some are folding up. So I'm going to start with this one that's folding up, that is taking up part of the center area. And these might not be an exact replica of each other, because I'm not going to try that hard. Not that I'm not going to try that hard, but I'm not going to erase and like really fix. I'm just going to let them be. So this one, this petal is folding out away, so in this direction. And then we have the petals that are kind of coming up around the other side. And they're overlapping a bit. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. I'm going to do another one right here. And this one is kind of cupped inside. So we have the inside of the petal and then the outside of the petal. So this will be the outside. And then we'll draw one This one is kind of falling out away. All right, and then we have one down here, this one, that is folding out and away. And a lot of this will exaggerate, or and I'm going to put another one in here, it's behind, with paint, with shadowing and shading, and demonstrate like how something folds away and the way the light catches it versus folding up and putting on these lines. Like the texture and the veining will help to communicate the direction. All right, so that is the top section of our little poppy, and I actually I'm going to raise this a little bit. I want it to cover up more. There we go. Okay, and now the bottom, we have our little part that attaches to the stem. And we're going to have a very thin bent stem like that. And then I'm going to have this bud kind of coming over this way. And I put it a little further down. I'm going to make it a little further up here from my original composition. There we go. And this I'm actually going to bring up a little bit higher. All right, so now we have our little poppy drawing. I can get rid of this in the center there. We'll take care of that with paint. And now we're ready to get into our colors. All right, awesome. Thanks for drawing with me. Let's get our paints out. All right, we're back and we have our paints out. So I'm painting in a Bao Hong sketchbook or watercolor journal. I am looking at alternatives to this journal right now just because this one is so hard to get. It goes out of stock a lot. So I ordered a couple and I'll show you those in a couple days. I'm using Core Paints QOR by Golden, and I am using a size 10 and a size 4 Velvet Touch brush. These are Princeton brushes, rounds, and I might also pull in, this is a Princeton Select brush, this is a liner brush, a size 2. Okay, so let's get started with our colors. So I'm going to use not too many colors. The star of the show is going to be this cadmium red light color. This is going to be our red. So let's put these up top. That's going to be our main red for the poppy. Oh, let's sneak that down into the frame a little bit more. I'm also going to be introducing some of this diarrhea yellow, which is a very warm yellow color. Gamboge yellow would be very similar. And we're just going to be using that in some undertone areas on the flower and in the center a little bit as well. Of course, we'll be using sap green for our greenery area. And last but not least, the fabulous, incomparable Payne's Gray. So I'll be using this for a lot of the details in the center. And maybe to mix with my green as well, to create some darker areas in the greens. But though that's our color palette, our 4 colors that we're going to be using. We have our main red, which is a cadmium red light, diarrhea yellow, sap green, and Payne's Gray. All right, so let's get started with our first layer. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start with the petals and putting on a light wash in most of the petals with some red as well as a little bit of yellow. I'm going to start at the top here. Oh, I'm going to rinse out my brush really well. So I'm going to take some of this yellow and I'm going to do a wash. I feel like I have a little Payne's Gray still in my brush. There we go. Because this red has a lot of yellow undertones in the poppy, I feel like. So just doing a light wash on all of these with some yellow, leaving some white space. And then we're going to get into our red. And I'm doing this while this is still wet. I'm not too worried about it. I want to create kind of this light and airy feel. And that is going to be done with this layer. Once we put on the darker color and more details, that will set up more of the structure of these petals. But so this petal is curved over, remember. I'm gonna leave a little space there. Oops, sorry for that shake. Kicked the bottom of the camera. All right, so I'm going to let that dry. And that is layer 1. And you can see I left lots of little white spaces. I'm just going to get a little closer down in here to the center. We're going to overlap with Payne's Gray around the center. All right. While that is drying, I am going to drop in a little yellow into the center. Just going to use my other brush. And then Payne's Gray around it. Let them touch. Okay. And then we're going to leave that. Let's just dot in a little red around here to bring it right to the edge. Okay, there we go. While that is drying, let's put in our sap green. Let me move this up a little bit. Actually, I'll zoom out a little so I am all on camera. There we go. Oh, we can do this sap green. We can also do our bud. First layer on the bud. There we go. A little green creeping up the side there. All right, so I'm still using my smaller brush. You can stay with your larger one. There must be like some Payne's Gray like on the side of my jar or something. I feel like I keep picking up Payne's Gray in my colors. So I'm just going to put on, just pull in some of that yellow. Perfect. All right, we're going to let this dry and we're going to come back and do our next layers. All right, we let everything dry and now we're going to get back in and add some shading and some details. So let's start with our reds. And this definitely gives us that light, airy feel with a little bit of yellow in there. But now we're going to go and add some more details. So I'm using cadmium red, pretty full concentration. And I'm going to start with these here at the top. And kind of the same technique. Letting some of that bottom layer show through there. I'm going to rinse off my brush. I have to get some paper towels here. Ooh. There we go. And then with a damp brush, I'm just going to blend this out. I don't want to lose all the vibrant, or all of that lightness of the first layer. I'm going to use the tip of my brush to create some texture. Like that. And you can see I'm using my brush in the direction that this petal is going. So this one is curving out this way. So those lines and strokes, I'm moving in that direction. Same for this one. This is kind of darkest towards the edge here and it's curling out and away in this direction. And this petal is layered over this one, so this light area is the edge of the petal on top. I'm going to actually bring some yellow back into this one here, just for a little interest. As it kind of curls, whoops, curls away. And I'll definitely be adding a little bit more detail in a third layer. But let's finish this up. And this section here, this being the outside, I'm going to, whoops, let's get some of this in here. make this section that's inside darker, and then letting the outside remain lighter. And then this is underneath that part. So we can now see like the curling and the different colors of outside versus inside. All right. And you can see I didn't cover up every little speck of white. I left some of those highlights in. I'm going to take a little Payne's gray and a little red. I'm going to put it right here for a shadow. All right, we're going to let everything dry again, and we're going to come back with a smaller brush and do some more details. But while we're letting that dry, let's do another layer on our little bud here. Same kind of idea as above. I'm going to have most of the concentrated color towards the bottom, or where it attaches to the stem. And then blend it out, but also leaving some texture and some lighter areas. And let's put some sap green. We're going to pull some right to the edge there and let that softly blend in wet on wet. I'm going to take some darker sap green right along the inside edge. Oops, I made a second stem. It's okay. And same thing here. Again, you can use your smaller brush here, but just adding in some texture and some highlights. Some areas that are a little lighter and a little darker. I'm going to have to do something with this third stem here that goes to nowhere. Maybe I'll just do another tiny little bud over this way. We improvised. And I can work on the more details of that later. All right, let's let that dry and come back with some details in the center and a few more details on our petals. All right, everything is dry and we're back. Let's add on some final details that'll make things really start to pop. So I'm using my smaller brush here. I am going to use my cadmium red with a tiny bit of Payne's gray, like the tiniest bit, just to deepen the tone a little bit. And I'm going to come in and put in with the tip of my brush, you can see that, these delicate kind of lines that just emphasize the veining. I'm going to add some shadows under this petal here. And I'm also going to add some shadows kind of where petals overlap. So here next to this one, where they overlap, and maybe this one here. And you could use, if you have a liner brush or a smaller brush, if you're more comfortable with making thin lines with that, you can definitely use that. I'll come around the back here. Scooping up from the back. And you don't have to put detailed lines everywhere. You can be selective. I am going to put a shadow here. Make this a little darker on this edge. I think in my original drawing, I didn't have this little flap here, but when I painted it, it just came out that way. I left that part lighter, so we're going to go with it. It looks great. And the last piece, all right, while that stuff dries a little bit, is going to be some really dark Payne's gray. First, I'm going to add lots of little dots here with the tip of my brush. Oh, that one bled out a little bit. That's okay. So lots of little textured dots. Just all about really tiny ones, some slightly bigger ones. And then I'm going to take my brush, and a liner would be great for this, but just start to do some thin lines coming out into the dots. I'm not connecting everyone like perfectly. Some of them will just be floating. I'm not worried about it. Gonna make this a little darker here, all around this edge. So as I'm making these areas darker around, it's lightening or brightening up the center. Before it was very flat, but that's what contrast will do. I'm going to add a little more yellow to the center, and I could have left this a little more white also. Just to add a little yellow there. And oh, let's put a little more texture on this one over here. Our little bud, and then we got that made up bud on the bottom there. We got to give that some love. And then I'm going to put this kind of right along the edge. And let's add some darker green to the outside here. And a little more green over here. It's very dark, but I think we're just about done. You could definitely add some more, keep playing. Of course I will. This is one of those ones where I am very prone to overdo it if I'm not careful. But this type of painting also is great to walk away from for a little bit and come back to hours or a day later to really see, as things dry and settle, like if you really need more or if it is done. And then when you come back, you can really assess like how much more it needs. Sometimes you just get into the rhythm of painting, and that rhythm drives you forward when you really should stop. I'm actually just going to, this in here, make a little darker because I think that contrast is important. This part that's like under tucked in, and a little bit right here, and then I'm going to stop. And then we'll see. We'll reassess on another day, another time, but this we can call it done for now. There we go. So there is our poppy. Thank you for whoever suggested it. And this was a lot of fun to paint. A little bit more realistic, a little less kind of just loose and fun, a little more layering, which is always fun to do. So thank you for joining me. I'm Shayna Searcy. Don't forget to check out the description for links to supplies and materials I use on a daily basis. Keep an eye out for some experimentation with some new styles of journal. So I could recommend some others other than the Bao one, because this one does run out of stock a lot, so a lot of people can't get it. I still have a whole other one to use, so I'm excited about that. And hopefully they may come back in stock by the time I get through my second journal. All right, thank you so much, everyone. Take care, and I'll see you for another watercolor journal page shortly.